A nonpartisan system, in my opinion, is meant to facilitate communication between all sides.
If you're going to talk about voter rights, but you're not going to talk about the rights of independent voters, frankly, I think you're committing a form of voter fraud.
People all over this country in all communities don't vote in the ways that one might expect, and it's because of the discouragement created by a two-party system that does not represent the American people.
Democracy is ordinary people being able to impact on policies that determine their lives.
I don't believe that any citizen should be forced to register with any party in order to exercise his or her full rights as voters.
The parties, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, despise this. Why? Because it takes power away from them and gives it back to the people.
I think that it's directly tied to the fact that the primaries themselves are closed, they're run by the parties, they've created a situation that the will of the American people.
We're out here in the snow asking people to petition Senator Chuck Schumer to urge him to open up the Democratic presidential primary. In a New York Times op-ed recently, he posed an end to partisan primary. This is our way of showing him that thousands of his constituents are urging him to do so.
Yeah, I get asked all the time, what accounts for all this polarization? And probably the number one thing that accounts for it is the primary system.
A Republican primary appears to hinge on whether Mississippi's African-American voters show up and vote for a six-term incumbent white Republican.
Thad Cochran won because of the votes of the African-American community.
In the aftermath of the Cochran-McDaniel race, Mississippi's Secretary of State Delbert Hosemann released a study of Mississippi's election laws that recommended the state move to a top-two system. As a result, open primaries began to call Mississippi voters in an effort to gauge residents' reactions to the study and their opinions about the structure of primaries in their state. When asked about efforts in Mississippi to close the primaries, 84% of Republicans and 88% of Democrats said this was a step backwards. The Mississippi Sun-Herald used our results in an article about how Mississippi voters desire reform.
Representative John Delaney of Maryland has introduced innovative legislation called the Open Our Democracy Act. This is an extremely thoughtful piece of legislation.
Congressman Delaney reinforced the very thing that we talk about all the time: go to the grassroots.
And ultimately, 300 million smart, capable, patriotic Americans are not going to let 500 people stand in their way forever.
Breaking news out of Nebraska tonight, where lawmakers have voted to end the death penalty.
Open Primaries' widely heralded report on Nebraska's nonpartisan electoral system definitively proves that under a nonpartisan system, debates over issues prevail over partisan politics, even in a state heavily dominated by one political party. It has been distributed across the country, raising significant awareness of Nebraska's successful experiment and helping initiate a national working group, Legislators for Open Primaries.
When you're successful in winning an election, when you've had to court all voters, not just party voters, you become a better legislator. We are free to compromise. We're free to work out differences and not just take a hard line on a particular issue.
Virtually a 100% incumbent re-election rate. That means if I was already in the legislature or Congress and I could run for another term, I was virtually guaranteed to get that seat under the old partisan system. What we found in 2012 and 2014 was that 14 incumbents lost their seats.
I've got this for 18 months. I don't know what I do after November 2016, but I'm going to give everything I've got for the next 18 months to change our system and make our state what we know it can be.
Semester into school, I learned I wanted to help children and families directly. And so I made it my mission after that to see where I could fit in. And I think this is a really good starting point to get me to be able to do that.
Your right to participate in the system shouldn't be determined by whether or not you're in a party.
Al no permitir que el voto independiente participe en las primarias, estamos callando a un grande sector de la población.
Así es de que cuando uno considera que tenemos demócratas, tenemos republicanos y tenemos aquellos que se registran independientes, ahorita nomás los republicanos y los demócratas pueden votar en esas elecciones partidarias.
Young people who are coming of age are not registering into the parties. They're becoming independents because they just don't like that partisan culture.
Latinos now, in record numbers, are registering as independent and therefore, too, are being excluded from the primary election process.
We've been traveling all over the state, listening to the people of Arizona and finding out whether they are ready to invest in election reform. And here's what I can tell you. They are frustrated, actually they're angry, that their leaders, their elected officials are not responding to the issues that are important to them.
Why is the chairman of the Republican Party so threatened? Why is he looking to discredit an emerging reform movement? And the reason is that they do not want Arizonans from a wide variety of backgrounds and politics coming together.
The primaries in the state of Arizona are the biggest voter suppression that there is in this country, because people are not allowed to vote for who they want to vote for, not who for the parties want them to vote for.
If you look at American history, there's no linear path. From the day the Constitution was signed, the issue of the character of our democracy, who gets to participate, how they get to participate, it's gone through multiple phases of, first of all, just inclusion of African Americans, of women, of people that don't own property. It's gone on to look at civil rights issues and voting rights issues and ending Jim Crow. The American people pay attention to this issue. They're organizable around these fights. The American people are desperately looking for a way to impact on what they see as a frozen storm.